trying to build bridges of understanding. If we are reactive, will we ever build these bridges?
No.
No. Sister, do you like standing up?
Yes, actually. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I just want you to know we don't charge extra for a seat, so I didn't want you to feel like... Okay, alhamdulillah.
I sit from time to time.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Okay. So, Christianity is 2,000 years old, and Islam is more than 1,400 years old, but for many centuries, many Asians and African countries dominated by Muslims were colonized by Britain, France, Holland, Belgium, Spain, and Portugal, thus thwarting Christian-Muslim dialogue. Now, I had a really interesting experience. As many of you know, I was a chaplain for the Department of Justice Federal Bureau of Prisons for the last 8 years of my career in prison ministry. I was having dinner with a man in Aurora, Colorado, a priest, one night. What do you think his surname was? Abu Bakr. Father Abu Bakr. Now I'm struggling because I want to make sure that I am identifying with this man in a loving way, coming from Hub, for the sake of Allah. And I'm really struggling inside because I know that with the surname Abu Bakr, he was born Muslim. So I finally said to him, I got to ask you to forgive me before I even begin. But I'm in such conflict here. Because with the surname Abu Bakr, you must have been born into a Muslim family. You know what he said to me? I was. He said the Catholic Church came into Africa. We were poor. They fed us and they gave us education. And therefore, I became a Catholic.
They do that.
Now, we have to understand that history defines us in many ways. And many people make decisions out of the events that happen in their life. It's not the events in our life that destroy us, it's the decisions we make about them. Many Christian missionaries tried to convert as many Muslims as they could by whatever means they had, by giving them education, medical treatment, clothing, food, and jobs.
But this is the model that they took from the Muslims during the first 200 years of our history of Islam, isn't it? Because they wouldn't convert, but they would give education for children.
I think the learning in this is that if we opened up this school right here to every student, regardless of their religion, and said we're going to give the best education, because let's look at it. In the Islamic community, we typically have the most well-educated people per capita of any other group. Just do your research on this. We have more than 300 doctors in this community, PhDs, or medical doctors. However you want to look at it, they're of a PhD level. And I'll tell you this, I have 3 master's degrees. I would not have a master's degree under my belt had I not become a Muslim. Because I did not have the same value for education. Islam instills a love for knowledge. So I went back to school in my 30s and got 3 degrees. All to support the community. A graduate certificate in marriage and family because I felt like imams needed something besides being able to read the Quran. A master's degree in social work so I could do therapy. Because I saw the issues in the community. A master's in Islamic studies so I would have the foundation of Islam. Because of their prejudice that Christianity brought them civilization, progress, and education, many converted. But now, with 20,000 people embracing Islam every year in America, if we were to open our schools and give education and feed non-Muslim people. We have 3,500 children in Orange County that do not eat from Friday when they leave school to Monday when they go back to school. Orange County. That's just one county in Florida. If the Muslims said, I'm going to feed those people, their hearts would soften to Islam. And there'd be no compulsion. The challenge is that we have people embracing this Islam, but within 2 years of embracing the Islam, they have detached because we don't have manners. We don't have the adab. We don't nurture and love the people that come to this faith. One of my students who's not here today, who's traveling, came to the masjid during Ramadan. She has blonde hair. She went over to have iftar, and she had on hijab. And they said, you're supposed to be over there with Imam Said. She said, no, I don't want to be with Imam Said tonight. I want to be with the masjid.
It was the Friday night.
It was the other interfaith event. But regardless, I don't know if all that's important. What I think is sad is that the sister wanted to be at the masjid and she's being sent away.
I was with her and I told her, don't tell her anything. She will stay here. She keep on insisting other women. I said, no. She is here, she like to be here among women, us.
That's right.
And you cannot tell her to do anything. I brought her.
Alhamdulillah. So my mommy was looking out for my back.
No, I did that. I remember what happened there.
So their thinking was diluted because this progress was attained after the separation of state and church in Europe. So do you see how history affects things? David Kerr wrote a book, Christian-Muslim Studies, Islamic Studies, and the Future of Christian-Muslim Encounter in 1995. Now what do you notice about the names that I'm naming so far? They are Christians trying to start the dialogue with Muslims. The Quran says that we are supposed to get to identify with each other. Why don't these names say Abu Bakr or Hassan or Said? Their acknowledgement of Muhammad as a prophet contributes to the development of contemporary Christian-Muslim dialogue. After the Second World War, many Muslims from Asia and Africa immigrated to the Western Hemisphere. This brought them more in contact with Christianity. But did they embrace those people or reject those people? Not only did they reject them, some of the extremist Muslims referred to them as kafirs. A word that we cannot use. There is no one in this room that has the authority to call somebody kafar unless what? Unless they say to you, I absolutely don't believe. You don't have that right.
And the people that are saying it are actually converts themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
No,
not always.
no,
sometimes. Generally speaking, we find Muslims feel closer to the Christians than to the Jews and disbelievers. Now I'm sharing stuff that I've learned and stuff that I see. 101 Christians came to the event. 21 Jews came to the event. Now I'd like to have 101 Christians and 101 Jews. But I'm just looking at the numbers in relation to the verse. Because I think it's powerful. I think when we translate these verses into what it means today, then it lives for us. The Word of God comes alive for us. In Surah 582, and I've already repeated this, I'm going to repeat it one more time just to bring it full circle. They will find the most vehement of mankind in hostility to those who believe to be the Jews and the idolaters. And thou wilt find the nearest of them in affection to those who believe to be those who say, Lo, we are Christians. This is because there are among them priests and monks, that is, persons entirely devoted to the service of God, as were the Muslims, and because they are not proud. At the end of the interfaith dinner, trying to think of her name, Lynette Fields stood up and said, we thank God. Listen to this now. She is on staff at St. Luke's United Methodist. We thank God for Imam Sykes and what he has taught us about Islam. How many were here and heard that? Look around you, folks. Now, when are we going to say we thank God for the net fields and what she taught us about Christianity so we can understand each other better? See, we say we want equality. We say that we stand for equality. But what we say and what we're doing is not congruent. Certain Christian denominations have made tremendous progress acknowledging that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam descended from Ishmael through his second son Kidr. The Davis Dictionary of the Bible, and you can take a picture of this with your iPhones, whatever phones you have,
Android.
and you can go back and check out Imam's sites and find out that I'm not making this stuff up. The Davis Dictionary of the Bible, 1980, sponsored by the Board of Christian Education of the Presbyterian Church in the USA, writes under the word Kidr. The people of Kidr were Pliny Sidra, and from their tribe Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ultimately arose. The International Standard Bible Encyclopedia quotes the following from A.S. Fulton. Of the Ishmaelite tribes, Kidr must have been one of the most important, and thus in later times the name came to be applied to all the wild tribes of the desert. It is through Kidr that Muslim genealogists trace the descent of Muhammad from Ishmael. This is from Christians, folks. What in our literature says about Christianity?
Except the Quran.
Except the Holy Quran. But these are things that are not written from their holy book. These are their scholars that are acknowledging us, just as the scriptures say.
Really, as a side note, do you want to mention what Ruth mentioned to you about their church affiliating with the against Israel?
This week, one of the ministers that I have preached in his church for 4 years. Now let me share with you folks that there's a church in the Villages called the Church of Christ of the Villages. It's not a Unitarian. Church of Christ is not Unitarian. That's a different denomination. Unitarians has atheists and all kinds of people in it, but that's different. This minister said to me that this week, the actual head of his church, they are now forming a boycott against Israel for what's being done to the Palestinian people. Now listen to me, folks. This is important. Let me tell you why. And Brendan's over there saying, yes! Let me tell you why. 2 or 3 years ago, I was sitting having dinner at this minister's house. And I was sharing with him the history, and I'm working on not getting emotional.
Go for it, baby.
I was sharing with him the history of how the Palestinian people as a race were being destroyed, and I was showing him how their area of territory had declined since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. When I first started this dialogue with him, he was in shock. He said, and this is a Citadel, is it a Citadel or
West Point.
West Point graduate. This man is brilliant. When I first planted the seed to have this conversation with him, he was in shock. He couldn't believe what I was saying. This week he told me, I'm seeing more about what you told me about. Let me share with you more about being able to be mature, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon if Allah gives me a chance at the luncheon. I was invited to his church under the auspices that there would be a rabbi, me, an imam, and a Christian minister. Because I've worked hard on my nafs, and I've worked hard to control myself, I insisted that the rabbi speak first, because in hikmah, in wisdom, I had a feeling that that rabbi was a Zionist. So there was wisdom in what I was doing. On the way out that night, in a tote bag, I had taken Jimmy Carter's book. I had taken 8 books about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I had no idea why I was taking those books. It was just like a fluke. Why would I take books to a lecture I was going to give? The rabbi stood up and said, I want everybody here to know that I'm a proud Zionist. And when the rabbi said that, my heart went from here to the bottom of the carpet where the padding was. And I just let the rabbi finish. And when the minister spoke, I let him finish. I insisted that he go next. And when I got my turn, I said the first thing we need to know here tonight is that a Zionist and a Jew is not the same thing. And I was invited here tonight with the understanding that I would be speaking with a Jew and a Christian, not a Zionist. And I said, if we really want peace, if that's what this meeting is about tonight, then the Zionist will give us 8 books to read. The Christian will give us 8 books to read. And I'll recommend, and I've already got my books here tonight. And I pulled every one of them out and showed them to the group. Was anybody here from the class there? Okay. And I'm going to tell you that you could have heard a feather drop that night when I finished. We didn't have a whole lot of dialogue, but let me tell you what happened. Those people walked out of there that night knowing that a Zionist and a Jew is not the same thing.
And that's how they got to where they are today.
And that's how they got to where they are today.
Was that church?
Do you see how this verse and what I'm trying to share with you is so important for us to develop ourselves and to be mature so that we can have dialogue, effective and influential dialogue. But if you are a hothead, nobody will deal with you. Did I share this Smith Bible Dictionary? No, I did not. Smith's Bible Dictionary prints the following. Kidder, black, second son of Ishmael, Genesis 25:13, by the way, the first book of the Old Testament. Muhammad traces his lineage to Abraham through the celebrated Quraysh tribe, which sprang from Kidder. The Arabs in the Hijaz are called Beni Harb, men of war, and our Ishmaelites as of old from the beginning. A Christian said this, folks. 2 out of 7 human beings in the world are now Muslims. Estimates on the number of Muslims living in the U.S. vary from 5 million to 12 million. Allah knows best. And it's hard to define exactly what a Muslim is. This is proof that Islam is not being spread by the sword. When people say that to you at your workplace, you say, well, wait a minute. Have you seen anybody wielding a sword? The majority of the murders are by white supremacists in this country. Not Muslim terrorists. We've got to have the knowledge that we can stand up and speak with authority and with influence in our religion, not emotionally. Pew Research Center demographic study based on analysis of more than 2,500 censuses, surveys, and population registers find 2.2 billion Christians, 32% of the world's population, and 1.6 billion Muslims, 23% of the world's population. The world population has increased 136% from 1934 through 1984. Christianity was 47% and Islam with 235%. See the plain truth. February 1984, in its 50-year anniversary issue, quoting from the World Almanac and the Book of Facts 1935 and Reader's Digest Almanac and Yearbook 1983. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all claim to emanate from the one and same Creator. All prophets from Adam to Muhammad were sent with the same message: total submission of mankind to Allah. The submission in Arabic is called Islam, and it means peace between the Creator and His creatures. That message is total submission of mankind with heart, soul, body, and spirit to the one God. Unlike the name Judaism and Christianity, this name Islam has been given by Allah, the Creator Himself. As mentioned in Surah 5 and verse 3, "This day I have perfected your religion, your deen, your way of life for you, and completed my favor on you, my na'am, and have chosen for you as the way of life, al-Islam, as your religion." Many religions are named after a man, but Islam gets its name from a holy book, from the Kalam of Allah, from the very speech of Allah. Neither the name Judaism or Christianity is found in the Bible. And I'll correct that in the Bible dictionary. No Israelite prophet mentioned the word Judaism, and Jesus never claimed to establish Christianity on earth and never called himself a Christian. What did he call? What did he refer to it as?
Son of Mary.
Followers of the way. Followers of the way. The word Christianity or Christian is mentioned only 3 times, not Christianity, Christian, is mentioned only 3 times in the New Testament, and first by pagans and Jews in Antioch about 43 years AD, long after Jesus had left this earth. So is that actually God-breathed scripture then? No, because it wasn't revealed to whom? Jesus. It was the diary of a man. In Acts 11:26, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch, not at the time of Christ. You can use this, folks. You know, I'm reading your Bible. I'm trying to get to identify with you. I'm trying to get to know you. And I learned that you were first called Christians in Antioch many years after the death of Jesus Christ. Tell me about that. In a loving way. I genuinely want to know.
Is this King James or is this?
This is King James. Sometimes International Revised Standard. It's the accepted versions that you will find in Christian churches today. Later by King Agrippa II to Paul in Acts 26 and 28. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, "Almost thou persuadest," or persuade, that's supposed to be persuadest me, to be a Christian. Now if you look at Paul, he gives 3 different stories of his conversion, but none of these were in the books written by Isa alayhi salam. They were in the diaries recorded and after the life of Christ. That's why there's contradictions about it. So the name Christian was first given by foes rather than friends. Nothing in this lesson is meant to be derogatory or demeaning. It's to be scholarly and factual, so that you can lovingly dialogue with this. Let me tell you that I'm going on vacation next week with Christians. They were my neighbors for 8 years. Where's my computer? 8 years. And when I was here after landing and 4 minutes after the plane hit the Pentagon, after I landed in D.C., as soon as they could, they let me know that my family will be safe. Yes. When I was doing my Master's in Islamic Studies and the transmission fell out of my car, they were the first people to say, "You drive our car 5 hours to Washington, D.C. to do your studies."
That was 9 hours.
Sorry, 9 hours. In 1 Peter 4:16, in his letter to comfort the faithful, said, "Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed." Did Jesus say this? No. The first Muslim on the earth was not Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Islam in submission to Allah as a way of life was revealed to Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Jesus. Abraham is known to be the father of Islam, but the people of the book will tell you that he was a Jew. Let's look at something. Thus, Islam follows is the way of life for all humanity. Genesis 11:31. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came in to Haran and dwelt there. Listen, folks, listen. This is dawah material. So Abraham, who was born in Ur of Chaldees, could not have been a Jew. First, because Ur of Chaldees was in Mesopotamia, which is now part of Iraq. Wouldn't that make him more of an Arab than a Jew? Secondly, the name Jew came after the existence of Judah, the great-grandson of Abraham. And let's look at the proofs of this. Genesis 12:4 and 5. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran, which is Iran, and into the land of Canaan they came. So Abraham immigrated to Canaan at age 75, and the Bible clearly mentioned that he was there a stranger. Look at Genesis 17:8. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. I'll get to you in just a minute, brother. Genesis 14:13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew. How can we call Abraham a Jew if the Bible itself calls him a Hebrew, which means a man from the other side of the Euphrates? It also means pertaining to Edom, a descendant of Shem. What happened to the name of Jacob after wrestling with an angel? Yes, brother, before I move on.
Sorry, back to my verse 11:26. You said that was in King James. I was just trying to highlight it in this Bible app I downloaded and I can't find it.
You have to read the verses before and after. If you noticed, I had ...
Okay.
And I quote it, I'm giving you just the part of the verse particular to today's class. Because otherwise, I will be giving you 8 and 9 verses at a time. But if you go back and you read 4 or 5 verses before and after, you'll see that the quotes I've given you are taken right straight out of those verses. Genesis 32:28, and he said, By name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. So Abraham was a Hebrew. The descendants of Jacob are Israelites, consisting of the 12 tribes. Judah was nicknamed Jude, so that only Judah's descendants were called Jews originally. And I'm not going to go into who was Moses today because I want us to leave a little early to get to our luncheon. So even though I'm going to do the class when I come back on Muhammad in the Bible, I will finish this presentation because this is invaluable for you in terms of your dawah. And when you present this stuff, you've got to get yourself a Bible. You've got to read these verses. You can't just copy what I've said and then try to go and be Imam Sykes. You've got to own this material, folks. You've got to have enough love in your heart for this verse that commands you to identify with people, that you get yourself knowledgeable so that you can be a dignified da'iya and a dignified da'i. Yes, brother.
I know in some ways when you try to spread dawah, you can spread dawah with some people, but some people, they go by, well, interpretation. So, with that said, do you, when they just want to interpret the way they want to do it, you just leave those people alone when you spread the dawah?
The Quran says what? Say peace to the ignorant. If I come to you using your book, and it says as clear as day, as clear as the nose on the face, it's the old saying, and you want to argue with me about your book, I can't argue with you about your book. So I will say, even my grandson agreed with me. I cannot argue with you about your book. I can only tell you what I see. I might say to them, how do you see this differently? Help me. And I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this 28 years. And this is what I get most of the time. That's what I get.
Has any minister ever been able to respond to you right away, brother?
No, ma'am.
I have a cousin who's in ministry. He'll just cut me right off. I believe this, and he don't want to hear anymore. So that's why I'm questioning. When you said peace be unto the ignorant, should I just
peace be upon the ignorant? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I accept and affirm you. Listen, folks. This is a great way to end. Salahuddin, a great man in the history of Islam. The Christians, Trinitarian Christians, used to come and spend the night in the masjid. They had, I'm going to call it a broom handle, just for the sake of context here, with a cross on top of it, leaning against the wall in the masjid, and it fell down. The Christians were praying in the masjid. Salahuddin went and picked it up out of respect and leaned it up against the wall in the masjid. Now, that is hikmah. I accept and affirm whatever you believe. Because the charter of Medina, when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina, he did a charter, a constitution unlike anyone that's ever existed in the world today. He said all religions have the right to be administered and to practice. Even pagans. This was in the first Islamic state, people. We need to study our history. And when we reach out to love, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, I'm looking at Lori and I'm thinking about her stepfather. I had no idea, but when I was in the prison system as an imam, I always have to clarify because some people walk away and say, oh my God, Imam Sykes used to be in prison. I was an imam. Here's a man that comes in the Kairos ministry, and we fall in love with each other for the sake of God. And in a conversation, I found out that he's the stepfather of my beloved sister Lori. Now he and I go visit other people that used to minister Christianity in the prison. There's an 84-year-old man that lives in Bushnell, Florida. They call it redneck country. He's done everything he can to get me to his church, but the minister's not ready yet. You know what he told that minister? When I die, I want Imam Sykes to do my funeral. That's dawah. And this is not from me, folks. This is Allah. But when you take the Quran and you apply it, as it says to apply it, without your own personal agendas. You just do what Allah said because Allah said it and that settles it. Then all the barriers that you've ever had will break. I was visiting, my mother will be 80 years old in September. I was visiting her a couple of years ago before my stroke. And she had told people I played the piano. We went to visit a friend of hers who actually is 86 now, still alive. And she said, I sure wish he would play the piano at my funeral. When I used to go and sign up people to be volunteers from the churches, African American churches, while they were filling out the application, I used to play gospel music to them. I was building bridges. So my prayer is that we will come back. Maysoon?
Yes.
$12.99? Sounds like a special. It's where we will come back. And then I will, inshallah, cover with you Muhammad in the Bible. Because I didn't realize so many people had not heard that recently. I want to say this. If I offended anybody in here today, I beg you from the bottom of my heart to forgive me. That's not my intention. I come from Hub. And I want for my brother what I want for myself. And in Islam, your brother is your brother in humanity. It doesn't only mean your Muslim brother. So I love you all for the sake of Allah. If you can caravan with us or follow us, this is the address where we're all going. Everybody that can go for lunch, put it in your GPS, your iPhone, your Android, or just follow the crowd. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.